Welcome, and thank you for joining City Parks Alliance for this webinar, which will explore how nonprofits and city agencies are partnering to reclaim and transform vacant lots. Our speakers today will talk about how turning underutilized parcels into green spaces can promote biodiversity and community wellness while providing opportunities for community engagement, workforce development, and other environmental benefits like stormwater infrastructure. I'm Diana Colangelo, Senior Program Manager at City Parks Alliance, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. If you're interested in continuing education credits for this webinar for AICP and LACIS, watch for a follow-up email in the next 2 days with instructions on how to claim your credits. On behalf of City Parks Alliance, we'd like to thank the Speedwell Foundation for their sponsorship of the 2021 Resilience and Recovery webinar series. Many cities across the country, especially those that have faced deindustrialization and outmigration in recent decades, are challenged with high numbers of vacant lots. Whether these lots are owned by the city or private entities, they can often be eyesores and indications of disinvestment, leading to further neglect and disinvestment. Understanding that making improvements even to small public spaces can be the first step in reversing this pattern, many organizations have sprung up in cities to help communities reclaim and maintain vacant lots. Since vacant lot reclamation often involves the creation of green space in some form, these lots can benefit not only the community, but can contribute to biodiversity and a more integrated network of green spaces that provide resilience in the face of climate change. Our speakers today are joining us from Baltimore and Philadelphia, and we'll be discussing their approaches to reclaiming and maintaining vacant lots, touching on partnerships, funding, design, community engagement, and workforce development. With us today are John Dre Jennings, Director of Real Estate Development at Druid Heights Community Development Corporation in Baltimore, Maryland, Kimberly Knox, Greening Coordinator at Baltimore Green Network in the Department of Planning for the City of Baltimore, Samir Dalal, Planning Manager for the Philadelphia Land Care Program at the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, and Natalie Cohen, Conservation Programs Coordinator at the National Wildlife Federation. We'll hear both of our presentations before moving into Q&A. To ensure that we can respond to everyone as questions or technical difficulties arise, here are some tips. To ask a question, click the questions icon on your screen. Type the question in the box and click send. Feel free to send questions throughout the presentations, but just know that we will be holding them until the end. If you experience technical problems during the presentation, please type it in the question box and send it to us. If you missed something, don't worry. Links to the presentations, recording, and related resources will be emailed to all registrants. So let's start by hearing about how the City of Baltimore partners with nonprofits to transform vacant lots. John Dre and Kim, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kim Knox. I am the Baltimore Greening Coordinator for the Baltimore Green Network for the Baltimore City Department of Planning. And the Baltimore Green Network plan was adopted in 2018 after 200 community meetings talking about how to link green assets within Baltimore, as well as how to recreate the city's 20,400 vacant lots within the community's visions, in the vision of the neighborhoods that they're located in, and in the vision of the residents. So we've been working with residents to recreate the vacant lots within the community vision. And why are we doing that? Well, Baltimore's population in the 1950s was 900,000, and right now it's about 582,000. So we have 20,400 vacant lots. 60% of them are privately owned. 17, and then we also have there are 17,000 vacant homes. 70% are privately owned. And many of these neighborhoods that have vacant lots do not have access or limited access to city-owned green space. The benefits to following community visions, great research has been done by the University of Pennsylvania and Johns Hopkins University, as well as the University of Vermont, which show there's a decrease when you maintain and green vacant lots. You could have up to a decrease of up to 28% in violent crime, up to 17% increase in home sale prices around those lots, positive mental health value benefits. Children who live near maintain green spaces are four times less likely to have mental health issues as adults. It leverages lots to create the community's vision for their community, bring in development, and then also maintenance is key, and maintenance of vacant lots provides opportunities for more jobs in the communities where the vacant lots are located. And here are some photos of vacant lots in Baltimore. I could have chosen lots of them, but as you can see, you know, there's a lot of dumping going on, from tires to contract waste. And then you also have tall weeds and grass, which can, you know, which the residents not only see unsightly, but are worried about what could be living rodents and other things that could be living in this tall grass and weeds. So this shows you just a snapshot of request, active maintenance request for the city to clean and mow lots. And you can see where the vacant lots are the largest, is where there's more open request, still waiting of lots still waiting for cleaning and mowing by the city. And the city spends about $220 per lot for a contractor to clean and mow it. And great programs such as in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and others have found that investing their maintenance dollars in local small businesses can bring big rewards, because if a business is located in your city and you're providing, you know, you're contracting with them to do the cleaning and mowing, those dollars are spent, of course, in your community, and usually they're more likely to hire local residents to fill those maintenance jobs. So our communities have seen that, and that's one of their solutions in terms of maintaining privately owned lots and lots that are key within their neighborhood, is hiring Baltimore-based landscapes, many of them in their own neighborhood, or working with residents through the Baltimore City's Adopt a Lot program to clean and mow the lots with their own funding, or working with community groups or neighborhood associations with the Baltimore City's Care Lot program, where they pay community groups $22 per lot per mow for cleaning and mowing, up to 10 times a year. And the community and neighborhood associations hire local youth, will hire local residents who are underemployed or unemployed, and that helps, of course, assets within the community. And then there's workforce development groups who are using the cleaning and mowing of lots as a training opportunity. Ways that the communities have been recreating the lots, they've done passive treatments, sometimes bringing in art. They use active treatments, which means that, you know, there's a lot going on and people can come in and see different things going on, including flowers and trees, or artwork, or, you know, sitting spaces. They also create community gardens. This is located at Sandtown, Winchester, not too far where Freddie Gray grew up. And it's the Heritage Tubman garden, where the green boxes are the residents can harvest the food themselves from this box, and the red boxes are the community sells the vegetables to local residents in order to keep the garden running. And also communities have created memorial parks to honor former members of the community. So we have a framework on recreating vacant lots, and if you're interested in getting a copy, you can email me at Kimberly, that's kimberly.knox@baltimorecity.gov, and here is my my contact information. But you're about to get a treat, because Ms. John Dre Jennings will be speaking.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joan Dre Jennings, and I'm with Druid Heights Community Development Corporation. And Kimberly is going to assist me with this slideshow presentation. Our motto is building people, building communities. Next slide. And we our mission is to cause, encourage, promote community self-empowerment through the development of economic, educational, employment, and affordable housing opportunities. And next slide. And so how does that connect with the landscape design and green space that we do? Well, the importance of doing that is that we want to ensure that we're uplifting all communities, in particular revitalizing all vacant lots. And I'll talk a little bit about the connection with community development and development of vacant lots. This is where we reside at 2140 McCullough Street. We have a community center and office space. Next slide. And again, we are near in West Baltimore, near if you're familiar with where the uprising or the rioting took place. We're near Pennsylvania North Avenue, and those are our dividing lines and our boundaries. Next slide. A little bit about our neighborhood is that we are low to mod income. The average household is 25,000, and we have about 20% home ownership, and we have about 400 vacant lots just in our neighborhood. Next slide. So this is Druid Heights, just the aerial view of some of the community. Next slide. And so as a community development corporation, we do a holistic approach for community, right? And so we're a certified housing counseling agency. We do real estate development, community resources, and we have a returning citizens department. Next slide. And so I want to get into our development projects and talk about some of our green strategies for the community. Next slide. But before I do that, we, as a community development corporation, we are developers. We pride ourselves on being community-based developers. And so we do affordable housing model where we are looking to create and build homes for those in the low to mod income bracket. And so Bakersview is a new construction that will surround one of our very big projects, green space projects. And so I wanted to just kind of show that site plan. Next slide. And so you see here I'll talk a little bit about the Callaway Park, which Ms. Kim Knox, our partner in Baltimore City, is doing an excellent job at working to redevelop that. And that is a city project where Druid Heights Community Development Corporation is partnering with them. So that's one of our green space, but this important for us is that the green space surrounds by homeowners and by residents that are in the space and not just vacant lots or blight. Important for us is that we're redeveloping around this green space. Next slide. Next slide. And so this is kind of a conceptual view of what it would look like looking at Bakers. And then this is the conceptual rendering of Callaway Legends Park, which is a 2 acre, is that right, Kim? Over 2 acre park where 2.5 acre park in green space where you see it's beautiful design and a great amenity for the community. And so again, we're partnering with the city and in the Green Network Plan for this to take place. But important to us is that we have homeowners, where I showed on Baker, and also on Druid Hill where we're developing. Next slide. And so in my time left, I'm going to talk about what you probably really came to hear, but I wanted to give you some context on why it's important for us to do development, housing development, and in particular, green space, what we call green space community projects. Next slide. And so I'm going to go over a little bit, discuss our community master plan, our green community master plan, the Green Thumb Club, which is residents who we partner with to help clean our green space. We'll share the private and public partnerships and talk a little bit about our workforce development, which we call environmental stewardship. Next slide. So the community master plan is a revitalization tool and a plans that a lot of developers use, especially in neighborhoods, in order to look at what are we doing for the whole landscape of the neighborhood, right? And so it's important to identify projects, housing projects, in addition to your green space, your open space, where you can create intentional green space and intentional use for that space and not just vacant lots, as Kim mentioned about the issues when they just remain vacant. And so you see here we have a green master plan that identifies your housing and your greening projects. Next slide. And so we collaborate with several partners. One big partnership we had was with the University of Maryland at College Park, where we got private funding from the Chesapeake Bay Trust in order to assist us in moving our green community master plan forward. Next slide. And so these are our green space projects. Here's one, the Peace Park, and we also do mural projects. Next slide. So Gold Street Park was about a $250,000 capital, which included pre-development. So for the landscapers in the room, the landscape architects, this cost was in that overall development cost. This was a 10,000 square foot project where we did remediation, and these were our partners, which I'll talk a little bit at the end. Hopefully I don't run over my time. Next slide. The Archway Park was a project where we had 3 lots that we redeveloped and worked with partners, Department of Housing and Department of Department of Natural Resources, excuse me, to get that funding. Next slide. And then the nature play space, I wanted to pause here. Our partners at National Wildlife assisted greatly in helping to create the strategy and get funding through Chesapeake Bay Trust, as well as University of Maryland, the medical campus. This is before pictures. Next slide. And this is after pictures. The great Congressman Elijah Cummings was able to make one of his final appearances in our nature play space, and this is how it looked after we were able to revitalize it. Next slide. And so I think I have about 3 minutes left. The Edding Pocket Park is a green space where we're partnering with the city in order to develop it into green space, and it is a dumping site. And so these are examples of how this green space looks before you do an intentional strategy. Next slide. And so this is the conceptual design of what we're looking for it to be. Of course, we have the bollards, is that the correct word? Blocking off so there's not any dumping. So these are just small strategies that we're working. And I asked Kim because she's the expert into helping us with these strategies of not dumping. Next slide. And so what is our workforce development? So in my last little 2 minutes, I think I want to just really reinforce that our partners we're working with the experts. We're working with our partners in order to create green strategies for maintenance. What is our maintenance? We're being creative and doing spruce ups in order to do maintenance. Why? Because there's a lot of, Kim showed the things that happen when you don't maintain it. And it's not just about cleaning the space, it's about maintaining it. And so we're working with partners. We're working with the MBE partner and our contractors, our architects, our engineer firm, and looking to work with more landscape architects in order to strategize on how to maintenance, and not just what type of planters to go in, what type of species to go in. And then we will, of course, want to hire the contractors in our community in order to maintain that. And we're doing that on a seasonal basis. Next slide. I think I have a minute. These are our partners: Department of Natural Resources, Department of Housing. Oops, that's left out, not intentional. Baltimore City Planning Department, Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development, University of Maryland, as I mentioned, the medical campus and College Park, Chesapeake Bay Trust are our funders. And these, of course, are public and private. And then we go into our partners, which is Cityscape Engineering, a WBE, and New Baltimore Contractors, who is a local general contractor in our community and also does landscape contracting too. Next slide. And so our big picture, next slide, is making sure that community is always engaged, making sure community is always at the center of everything we do, and they are part of everything we do. So I think that's my time, but next slide. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email or give us a call, and we would love for you to visit us here in the Druid Heights neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim and Jandre. We had a couple of questions coming in about kind of some of the specifics around endowing maintenance and who owns these projects. So we'll get to that at the end, maybe a little bit more of that nitty gritty, but thank you so much for these great ideas. You obviously have a lot of great public-private partnerships that are making this work possible, and providing those local workforce development opportunities, both good for the community and good for the long-term sustainability of the project. So thank you for sharing those great examples. So now we are going to hear about how the Philadelphia Land Care Program and the National Wildlife Federation have partnered with groups in Philadelphia to convert 26 vacant lots into 50 native pollinator gardens, which provide a variety of ecological as well as community benefits and are designed to be resilient in the face of climate change impacts, including extreme heat, drought, and flooding. So Samir and Natalie, you should be all set to take it away.
All right, great. And folks can see my screen?
Yep, it's not full screen, but.
There we go. Okay, great. All right. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I'm really happy to be here. And my name is Natalie Cohen. I work with the National Wildlife Federation in our Mid-Atlantic Regional Center. I live in Baltimore, so I have the privilege and honor to have worked with both Kim and Jandre on some of those Druid Heights greening projects. And then I also have the privilege of working with Samir in Philly. So Samir, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I am Samir Dalal, and I work with the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, more specifically working with our land care program, which works on vacant lots, which you'll hear about today.
Great. And so today, Samir and I will be talking about a project. We'll be talking about the PHS land care program, and then in more detail, our project around transforming vacant lots into climate resilient pollinator habitat. So before we jump in, of course, I have to acknowledge and thank our project partners and funders. So the funder of this project was the Wildlife Conservation Society and their Climate Adaptation Fund. So that was a 2-year project, or this was a 2-year project funded by WCS. Our core partner obviously was PHS and the Land Care Program, which receives funding from the City of Philadelphia. We also partnered with a researcher from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Dr. Chris Swan, and the American Planning Association. We are in the midst of a climate crisis and a biodiversity crisis. This photo here is of the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia after Hurricane Ida rolled through a few months ago. And yeah, that was a crazy storm, and the fact that it had such power still up in the Northeast Mid-Atlantic area is just mind-blowing. Climate change is here. And research has shown that Philadelphia is getting hotter and wetter as a result of climate change, and that so communities like Philadelphia that have lots of impervious surfaces don't allow rainwater to infiltrate, and few trees or other vegetation, which make these communities particularly vulnerable to extreme heat and flooding. And today we'll be talking about a project where we transformed a network of 26 vacant lots in West and Northwest Philly into climate smart pollinator gardens that not only improve the connectivity and diversity of habitat within the city, but we're also hoping will create a more resilient Philadelphia in the face of a changing climate. And before we get into more detail, it's crucial to note the long-lasting impacts of redlining, which was a racist housing policy that deemed particular neighborhoods unworthy of investment and lending based on racial discrimination. And it shaped modern-day American cities like Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Detroit. There are high correlations between historically redlined communities and gun violence, poverty metrics, vacant lot density, asthma rates, low urban tree canopy, and the list goes on. And so let's see, the 2 neighborhoods that we worked in were Mantua here and Strawberry Mansion here. So 2 historically redlined communities. And this large space here is Fairmount Park, which is a large park system. And so acknowledging the impact of redlining and systemic racism and environmental racism, there is a great opportunity to take those long-lasting impacts, like high concentrations of vacant lots, and turning them into an asset that provides environmental, community, and public health benefits. This project that we're speaking about today and vacant lot restoration in general must be framed with an equity and justice lens. So as I was touching on in the prior slide, there is an opportunity to mitigate some of these impacts of climate change, but also the legacy of redlining by creating green space that serves as pollinator habitat, provides air and water quality benefits, and engages communities. And this is a map of vacant lots in Philadelphia. There are about 40,000. And so we are really excited around shifting the narrative behind vacant lots from detrimental and unsafe to community assets and equitable access to nature. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Samir to get into a little more detail about the land care program.
Thank you, Natalie. So yeah, so there are estimated over 40,000 vacant lots in the city, and most are a mess. They're not cared for. And so in came the PHS's land care program, which, as Natalie mentioned, is a collaboration with the City of Philadelphia, in which we maintain a little over 12,000 of those 40,000 vacant lots, whether they're city or privately owned. Next slide. Most of those lots are a mess. They're not cared for, they're overgrown, they're weeded. Next slide. They're filled with trash and debris. It's not something that anybody deserves to live by. Regardless of which neighborhood you live in, regardless of your income level, nobody deserves to live by this. And many of these lots happen to be in those areas that Natalie mentioned were historically redlined neighborhoods. And so PHS, along with the funding from the City of Philadelphia, comes in and maintains these lots. It stabilizes them and turns that messy lot into a community asset. So this picture is actually the exact same lot in the previous photo. You can see the transformation that exists. So how we go about doing this is we go through this stabilization process where we work with professional contractors that are from the city to work on these lots where they completely clear out the major trash and debris, and they'll grade it. I don't know, the photos aren't showing up, Natalie.
Oh,
Oh,
there we
go, one
go.
by one. Where they'll grade it with some topsoil and hydroseed it so that it's a nice, flat, maintainable surface that the community can utilize as a mini park. We'll install a post and rail wooden fence in the front that prevents cars from driving up and dumping, but then allows humans access to the park. And then on the larger sites, if it's possible, we're able to plant trees on the site as well. And so it's simple. It's relatively low cost to what we would normally do with these lots, and it creates a huge impact. Next slide. So you can see some examples here about how the level of transformation that exists. It really creates a green space where actually most of these neighborhoods that have these vacant lots don't even have a safe, clean green space for kids to play or for people to utilize, which impacts then our health and well-being. And it leaves a large transformation on. It's not just single lots, like they're whole blocks like this one, which the next photo will show us, is transformed. And so in our next slide, we'll talk about this impact of the land care program. So these are our 4, PHS has many different programs, and these are our 4 priorities, impact priorities that we think about. And really, like the vacant lot program, the land care program, meets basically every single one of them. It helps build strong relationships by inviting the community out. They're utilizing it. We work with the community to help identify lots. Sometimes we help organize block parties. On a few lots, like these pollinator gardens, we do a little bit extra. Building healthy environments. There was a study done in 2018 by researchers at UPenn that saw that it led to up to a 29% decrease in gun violence. It led to up to a 69% decrease in feelings of depression. There was a heart monitor study that showed a decrease in anxiety. So it really is impacting our health and well-being. With some communities use it as community gardens. We put these pollinator gardens on, which help community gardens, that increases access to fresh food. And then I think personally, what I appreciate the most about it is it creates job opportunities. We work with work with small contractors and help build their business up, which I'll get to, and help create a little over 230 jobs annually, full-time jobs. So if you can move along the next few photos, you can see some examples of how the community utilizes these lots. Again, it's nothing major. We're not doing this huge planning process. This is a very simple, low-cost, relatively low-cost intervention that has a big impact where people can use the space for a variety of reasons. Even horses. And as I mentioned, we work with 15 professional contractors, majority of which are minority or women-owned. They're small businesses. We also work with 17 community organizations like CDCs that will hire from within the community that they're working in and that they're serving. And so this really puts the dollars that are being invested into the neighborhoods by creating jobs. And we don't just like hire them, and if they do great, we stick with them, but if they do terrible, we let them go. We work with them. We try to set them up for success, giving them the contracts that they're able to handle. We work to build their capacity with different trainings, different types of contracts. We help them get access to resources. So it's really trying to collaborate with people and with organizations and help build them up. And then we also have our Roots to Reentry program, which helps train formerly incarcerated returning citizens. So it's really creating this environment that can lead to a healthy community. So next, as Natalie will take over, is this, we're hoping, sets the par for vacant land so we can do other special projects like this pollinator garden project. I will say, again, the land care program is almost fully funded by the city of Philadelphia to do it, but then we got this additional funding from the Wildlife Conservation Society to help us do something extra. What's the one up to the vacant land program where we can do on special sites? Go ahead, Natalie.
Great, thank you, Samir. So yeah, as Samir was saying, that is the PHS land care program should be the status quo for vacant land stabilization in cities across North America. And so we wanted to take this already proven model and take it a step further, kind of envisioning a land care 2.0, if you will. So beginning in 2019, NWF partnered with PHS to transform a network of 26 vacant lots in Philadelphia in Strawberry Mansion and Mantua, those two neighborhoods I pointed out on that map at the beginning. And we wanted to transform these vacant lots into a climate smart pollinator garden that improves the connectivity and diversity of habitat within the city, and also kind of forms like so we were imagining a pollinator corridor specifically around that large park system, the Fairmount Park. And so the lots that we worked on were all managed by the PHS land care program, of course, and the gardens were designed to be resilient to the projected impacts of climate change, primarily the hotter and wetter conditions. We installed 50 different pollinator gardens on 26 different land care sites. As Samir said, some of it is really just one parcel of a lot, but then we have other lots where it was probably like 15 to 20 parcels, so it's a really large green space. So that's how some lots received multiple gardens in those two neighborhoods. And we selected the lots, we selected these two neighborhoods because of their high concentration of vacant lots and their adjacency to that park system, with the goal of creating that corridor. And there were a lot of factors that went into choosing the different garden sites, which are illustrated on these maps here. And sites were selected for visibility, community visibility, sunlight levels, murals, proximity to each other, because we were looking at like foraging distances for pollinators, community investment and activation, and land ownership, which we can get into a little bit, but it's oftentimes most easy to work on city-owned land as opposed to privately owned. So these were all city-owned. And some of the sites that we selected originally back in 2019 were changed because some of the lots that we chose were already beginning to be redeveloped, which is also a very real factor in this type of work. So let's see, each of our gardens were 300 square feet, though the shapes differ depending on the site itself. This was such a large scale project that we worked with one of those local contractors from that Samir was mentioning, and the contractors prepped the site. So they removed the sod, they tilled the soil, added a little topsoil. And it's really important to note here that no chemicals were used. So we just brought in a sod cutter as opposed to spraying with Roundup to kill the grass. And the professor from UMBC that we worked with, Dr. Chris Swan, focuses on the ecology of vacant lot restoration. And so we worked with him to design these different native plant communities. And then we were able to source the landscape plugs from PHS's own nursery, Meadowbrook. So that was really cool. And all of the species used in this project were native to the Mid-Atlantic and should be able to withstand the harsh environment of a vacant lot. This project was research oriented. So each pollinator garden was randomly assigned a mixture of 4 to 12 different species. So some gardens had 4, 6, 8, yada yada species. And we used these different planting groups to research the best mix of plants that benefits people and pollinators, and that could be replicated kind of at scale throughout Philadelphia and the Mid-Atlantic. Oh, and then this is our plant list below for our native plant lovers out there. So as I was saying, the goal was to determine an ideal planting palette for restoration that maximized resiliency and stormwater benefits while also being easy to maintain and aesthetically appealing. I designed all of the 50 gardens, which was definitely laborious, but pretty cool. And we did large plant groups, groupings for easier plant identification and maintenance. And so I've got some installation photos here. In October 2019, we installed about 15,000 landscape plugs in all of the 50 gardens. It was done over the course of a week by that landscaping crew that prepped the site as well. Here we have some Asclepias tuberosa up front, or butterfly weed for our monarchs. This is prairie dropseed, and it turned out that pretty much none of the sites this grass survived on. So we were able to, come to that conclusion that prairie dropseed isn't probably the best grass for this type of restoration work. Oh, and shout out to Caitlin. She's like one of the PHS land care managers as well. She's awesome. Ooh, this is probably one of my favorite gardens. So this was one of the lots in Strawberry Mansion with the Stay Golden mural. And it features Rudbeckia subtimarosa here. We have aster in the background and some Liatris baccata here. Oh, and ironweed. And so, given the timeline, these gardens went in the ground in 2019. COVID hit in 2020, so our plans for engagement with community and education were drastically impacted, but maintenance continued, and it was a total success. PHS hired additional local contractors to water and hand weed the gardens, and it was like absolutely critical to the success and survivability. And so, some of the murals that were just so striking, and so compared to this bright, colorful mural, you can't really see the garden down here, but it stretches along the length of that wall. And another beautiful thing about this land care program and this kind of 2.0 model is the community buy-in and activation of the spaces. So prior to the garden being installed, there were no picnic tables or raised beds. The fence wasn't painted. These cool tire planters weren't here. And then you can see this is from that same lot. There's a community garden that's been established. So you can see this garden here, and then there's also a large garden in the distance. And so that wasn't there before we put these pollinator gardens in. So it's really cool to see that the community buy-in there. Samir, do you just want to shout out Miss Calhoun real quick?
Sure, yeah. So this is Miss Sandra Calhoun, another similar story that Natalie shared the last photos, where she helped bring the land care program to this lot in her neighborhood. She was ecstatic with the pollinator garden, and then she even works with other organizations in the neighborhood to add, a pergola and some garden boxes and benches. And I think we've been working with the community, and I think the community really appreciated these gardens and wanted to build off of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a photo from this past spring with the Roots to Reentry folks pruning a red bud here, I believe that is a red bud. We worked with the Roots to Reentry program, and we were able to plant some of those replacement grasses. We did a little blue stem instead. And so that research with Dr. Chris Swan, we conducted research on all of the gardens. And we found that the number of plant species did not influence the garden's ability to absorb stormwater, and that the soil in the gardens were far more well drained as the plants are taking up more water than the surrounding turf. And I love this picture so much. Overall, all the plants did really well, particularly our coneflowers, butterfly weed, aster, monarda, and goldenrod. A lot of monarda here, Rudbeckia maxima. Folks planted, the neighbor that lived right here, she planted some sunflower seeds so that we've got some sunflowers in there too. And so, we really thought that limiting your garden size to 300 square feet is easier to maintain, and only doing between 4 to 8 species in your planting design created the best looking gardens. And so during the garden's first 2 years of life, they've provided habitat and food sources to a number of native insects and birds, and in an otherwise ecologically barren grass lot, these gardens serve as a corridor for pollinators to survive and thrive in urban spaces. And just real quick, I know I'm a little over time, tips for success. Paid maintenance is crucial and I think should be a part of every single vacant lot restoration project. Work with or on city-owned land as opposed to privately owned. Seek diverse funders like the Wildlife Conservation Society, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Appeal to your city council and explore some of those public-private partnerships that Jandre was speaking to. Of course, you must work with local community members and community orgs to identify your lots and community leaders. Simple, thoughtful designs are better than, a more robust planting design, and making sure that the rest of the lot is well maintained and mowed and clean and free of debris. And so in conclusion, abandoned and or vacant land can provide key wildlife habitat and opportunities for workforce development as cities move toward greener and more sustainable ecosystems. And this is Samir and my contact information, so please don't hesitate to reach out. And I will stop.
Great. Thank you so much, Samir and Natalie. It's really inspiring to hear about all this work that you're doing, obviously contributing to that integrated network of spaces, but also really engaging the community that, tends to start taking ownership when they see these improvements and just maximizing those positive environmental benefits. So really, really great work. So we're gonna move into audience Q&A right now. So if Jandre and Kim wanna come back. So I want to start with some questions that came in that were sort of more like getting into the nitty gritty of kind of how to do these things. So actually one question that I think should be maybe kind of a quick one. Somebody was asking, Samir, where the city funding for the PHS land care program comes from, because you said you're mostly funded by that. So is it general funds? Is it property tax levies? How does that work?
Yes, it is city general funding that the city council allots. They're using, that is sourced from taxpayer dollars, but we also get federal funding as well to help do the initial stabilization. But then it's city general fund that helps us maintain it year after year.
So they've really kind of decided to invest in that, basically, sounds like. Yeah. So another question that came in was insurance. So folks, this actually came in during Kim and Jandre's presentation, but how insurance coverage is handled for community maintenance activities. Can maybe start with Kim and Jandre, but if Samir and Natalie have thoughts about that, that would be great too.
So with the adopted lot, because all of the adopted lots and the care lots are on city property, the city is liable if they're putting on large installations that could be a liability, such as a dog park or a urban farm or something that the city had and we have a list of. Then they have to show insurance when they go out to do the adopt a lot or a land lease from the city. But most of the time, we understand that the liability, if we're on the deed, it's going to be us.
Mm-hmm. Samir and Natalie, do you have anything to add on that in terms of bringing in other folks to do?
So, I mean, that's part of the reason we're able to go through a lot of different, reach 12,000 lots versus a few smaller ones is we don't think too much about that. We have our own insurance, but we don't own any of the land. And we don't plan too many, I hate using this word, but interventions on these lots that are complex. We keep it simple so that us or the city don't have to worry too much about liability. And it creates an impact.
Yep. And then there was a question about sort of ongoing funding for maintenance. I feel like folks kind of touched on that a little bit with kind of these workforce development partnerships, but I don't know if you wanted to add anything about, you know, kind of in the long term, how do you kind of endow maintenance or really kind of think about that holistically in the long term?
That's obviously one of the agreements that we have, is that the community agrees that they'll be taking it on a sustainable level. And there are a variety of ways where communities are trying to use leveraging, like we have a neighborhood that's working on creating a workforce nursery. Somebody is working in terms of a flower garden to harvest seeds. In terms of creating long-term. And that's one of the things the Baltimore Green Network does, is that we help identify funders as well as grants and help them through in terms of the grants. We also help them in terms of, they have the questions in terms of insurance or permits, that we're basically the liaison to get those things done. So it's the communities have been finding that, as well as with the Care Lot program, the city sees this, obviously the savings, and so that's why and it's from our Department of Public Works, is able to put a portion towards grants for the communities to be able to care and mow a lot at $22 a cleaning and mowing per lot.
Providing that support, yeah. So another question that came in was concerns about toxic chemicals or contamination in these vacant lots. It would be great if both groups could speak to that, maybe, because I would imagine it's a concern to some extent. So not sure how you kind of tackle that, if at all.
But
Yeah.
we actually,
Did you want me to go, Kim?
Yeah. You want to work for in terms of gold?
Sure. For goals, so we do environmental, and just briefly to talk about the insurance, which I missed. So all our contractors have to have insurance, and we, of course, as a developer, so we're not just a community group, we're a developer. So we already have those insurance. We're required by the city to have certain insurances in place. And so depending on the funding, we have to have that insurance. But our contractor, which is why we want to do a general contract or a landscape, they have to have certain insurances in place in order to do this work. And so that goes in hand with the remediation that we actually did with Gold Street. We do have to do, based on funding, environmental. So we actually went through the whole remediation phase 1, phase 2 painfully, and actually a remediation process through Maryland Department of Environment. Is that right, Kim? And we actually also had to have a consultant. And so how do we pay for that? We had to get additional funding. So yes, we do. It does matter depending where. Of course, you can do, you don't have to do a full environmental depending where it is or depending the type of landscape design or park it is. But we do have to do those things. Usually the funders will require it. And, unfortunately, if you have to go as far as remediation, it is another cost that you will have to find funding for.
But the area that John was talking about was former coal field. Most of the lot treatments are putting grass in on former residential properties. So We also have, one of my colleagues has tested the farms working with Johns Hopkins, testing the soil on the farms. And we also require that if you're doing farming or community gardens, we highly recommend that you use beds. But we have, but for most part, the lots are residential. So we haven't seen as much as we would in like a dry cleaner or some other location or coal field, like John Jay found.
All right. Okay, and then so one question that came in, which I thought was interesting, was are any of these vacant lot greening programs paired with specific anti-displacement strategies? And if so, what has been most successful?
I think John Jay is the global ambassador for that question.
Well, yeah, so that's great that the question came up. Of course, there is question and concerns for our residents around gentrification, around displacement when you continue to revitalize the vacant lots and become these huge, beautiful amenities. And so, sure, is there conversation around it? Yes. We, pride ourselves and want to be that tool for residents who are having those issues. But also a lot of homeowners want the market to go increase if you're a homeowner. And so we have to have that conversation on that balance, frankly, of if you're revitalizing community and you're changing the landscape, yes, the market is going to increase, but we're doing affordable housing and we're providing resources for our renters, and also talking to these developers and these landlords on some other strategies. Of course, the market is going to shift. You have to have that conversation, but the goal is to not create displacement.
Mm-hmm. And then if I could also just elaborate on some cool community land trust happenings in Baltimore. I'm not sure what the CLT community is like in Philadelphia, but there's Charm City Land Trust in East Baltimore that stewards about 20 vacant lots, and they're starting to develop permanently affordable housing. And then there's also the South Baltimore Community Land Trust that is currently trying to Kim, I don't know if Filbert Street Garden ever exchanged hands from city-owned property into this land trust, but there are cool land trusts trying to figure out anti-displacement housing and green space.
Yeah,
I'm a big proponent for CLTs, so I had to shout them out.
Great. So I think we have time maybe for one or two more questions. So one person asked, has there been any issue with a private lot being embraced by the community and then lost to development? And then relatedly, has there been any way to seek recompense from the private property owners who benefit from their lot being improved? So I think that could go for either of you.
On Baltimore side, it has happened. It actually happens more on the city side than the privately owned side, because the vacant lot is usually someone who's didn't leave an estate, so there could have been transfer of ownership. The real estate market went down, so it was hard to sell the property. So actually, we have several beautiful gardens deliberately on privately owned lots that have lots of liens, because they know they're probably not going to be moving without a lot of notice. So it usually sometimes it's to the benefit of being on a privately owned lot that the owner has passed, because it'll take some time to clear the title and get the property sold.
And on the Philly side, yes, I mean, our land care program specifically, we don't own any of the lots that we work on. It's considered an interim land use program. And so we lose about 200 to 300 properties a year to development. We gain about 200 to 300 a year. And so that's why we're maintaining a little over 12,000 vacant lots. And yeah, so lots that do go into a full garden state, or the community is fully connected with it and built on it. We collaborate with an organization in Philly called the Neighborhood Gardens Trust, which helps get leases on the property, 1, 5, 10, 15-year leases, or on rare occasions even purchase the property so that it can be protected. But in most cases, it's not owned by us, and so it does get developed. And so, we take that risk, which is another reason why we're doing simple interventions. I think the other thing to note is that, actually, I'll leave it at that. We're out of time. So.
You sure?
Yeah. These can be long conversations.
Yeah, I know. And I wanted to ask more questions about partnership and, folks who maybe don't have some of these organizations in their cities, like who can they look to partner and that kind of thing. But we are out of time. So, maybe in some of the follow-up resources we send, we can address some of those things. But in the interest of time, we should probably wrap up. So I want to thank our speakers for joining us today and for sharing such excellent information about how they're reclaiming underutilized spaces for the benefit of the environment and local communities. For anyone who needs to jump off, I would just ask you to please take a moment to fill out the survey that pops up at the end of the webinar. Your feedback is really helpful in helping us shape future programming. I am going to share my screen for a moment. Sorry, I want to give the, I want to make sure that you have the contact information for, okay, sorry, this isn't working. But anyway, so please visit the events tab at cityparksalliance.org for information about upcoming webinars. If you have additional questions, I am going to be emailing this recording and the slide presentation, which also will include all of the email addresses for the speakers from today. So if you have additional questions for them, you can reach out. We'd like to thank the Speedwell Foundation for their sponsorship of the 2021 Resilience and Recovery webinar series. Within 2 business days, you'll receive an email with links to the recording, related resources, and instructions for how to claim your continuing education credits for AICP and LACIS. So please also mark your calendars for City Parks Alliance's Greater and Greener Conference, which is taking place in person in Philadelphia from June 18th to the 21st, 2022. Registration will open in February, but in the meantime, you can explore the conference tracks and get the latest information at greatergreener.org. So thanks again to all of you, our attendees. Thanks to the speakers for joining us today. And please do fill out that short evaluation and keep up the great work that you are doing for your communities and for our nation's urban parks. Take care.